I didn't have media connections. I didn't have money, right, to back it up. I didn't have some marketing strategy to get on all these TV shows. I had a vision. I had a why. I knew I would never give up on it, and I focused on the process.
All right, gang, welcome to the BK Strength Show. We are live in person with my man, Drew Manning, at BK Strength, my private gym here in Southern California. Now, you might know Drew as the personal trainer who gained 76 pounds just so he can feel empathetic and find the pains and the frustrations that his clients go through. And that led him to the Dr. Oz show and the Jay Leno show and national celebrities. So Drew Manning, welcome to the show,
Hey,
brother.
What's up, man? How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing great. Other than a torn muscle, I'm doing fantastic. No, I'm good. Thanks for being
having
careful.
me on.
Yeah. Dude, so first off, you are part of the inaugural episodes.
Okay.
Thank you. The second episode we're filming. The first one with Jay Ferruccia. Do you know Jay?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was with Jay
Good
Ferruccia
guy.
earlier this week. So I'm cutting my teeth on you as well, where this episode is concerned. And it's way different than the Empire podcast. This isn't about business. The BK Strength Show is about building physical strength, emotional strength, and of course, mental strength, mental toughness. And no better place to do it than a house of strength.
Yes.
Here in the gym. So what clicks in someone's brain when they're jacked and lean and fucking have abs and strided like you, and they go, I think I'm going to gain like 80 pounds of fat just to see what people feel like. Where does that come from? What's the matter with you?
No, I know. What the hell is the matter? I don't know why I did it. Just kidding. Here's the thing. At the time, this is what I was going through at the time, right? I was personal training clients, and I was someone who had grown up my entire life in shape, right? I played football, wrestling. I never once struggled with my weight. Sure. And here I was trying to help people who were struggling with their weight. And I'm like, it's so simple. Here's your meal plans. Here's your workouts. That's all you do. And then you just get in shape. It's not that hard. And they'd be like, Drew, I try to follow the meal plans, but I gave in. I had soda, or, that workout you told me to do, I didn't get around to it. I was feeling kind of tired that day. And I'm like, why don't you just do it? It's not that hard. You just put down the junk food, you go to the gym, you work out, and you're going to see results. I promise. But there was a disconnect. I could tell they would look at me and say, Drew, you don't understand how hard it is. Like, for you, it's always been easy. And I couldn't understand that. And so I was thinking of ideas, and the idea, it popped up in my head. Like, I didn't I can't really say I came up with this idea. It was just a light bulb moment where it's like, what about this idea? I don't really know where it came from. It just came. And
now, did you decide it's going to be 76 pounds, or did you say, I'm going to gain weight to see how they feel?
I'm going to gain weight to see how they feel. I thought 50 to 60 pounds. I was averaging it out like 10 pounds a month, 6 months, 60 pounds. That's doable.
Bro, I can do that in like 28 days. I'm a winner.
Yeah. But like the time limit was 6 months. And then the other thing that was hard that a lot of people don't know about is there was no exercise. So it's not like I was bulking up like a bodybuilder.
Gotcha.
It was no exercise, which that, as you know, that's therapy. That's, something you have to have. And so for me to let that go, that was another hard component of this journey. But, here's the thing. I know it was crazy, but sometimes it takes something crazy to catch people's attention, and then also to hopefully motivate and inspire them in a positive way, even though it was set up as backwards, right? But that's what happened. And so that's why I have no regrets.
So what I'm hearing you say, and I've known you long enough now, and you've come to Fitness Business Summit, and you've been kind enough to share this message, but I've known you long enough and well enough to know that this wasn't like a stunt of, I'm going to try and get media attention.
Yeah.
This was not something where this is how I become famous. This was, I really want to know how my clients feel. So let's kind of do a deep dive into that.
Sure.
Dude, and you're nuts. You stopped working out. Mm-hmm. So those listening to this show right now and watching this on YouTube, you need to know that I hurt my right side of my body. I torn the bicep where it inserts into the shoulder griddle. Thankfully, no surgery required, but I've been training legs 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
But the other days that I'm not working out, I start going into a little depression and a funk. And you hit the nail on the head earlier. You said, as you know, working out for us is therapy.
Yeah.
So you stop the thing that gives you daily therapy, that gives you daily grounding and balance, and then you start doing things to put on fat and get foggy-headed.
Yeah.
Tell us the process. How do you feel? What happens to your sleeping pattern, to your life routine? I'd love to know.
Yeah, 100%. So just to make a long story short, it was a rude awakening. It was a wake up call just how hard this journey was. A lot of people think, oh yeah, it's going to be fun. You just eat whatever you want to. You know, you don't have to go to the gym. And at first, it was like that. It was kind of like this sense of freedom. Like, I don't have to go to the gym. I could skip the produce section, go down the cereal aisle and eat cereal for days, right? I skipped all that, and it was fun at first.
How long? For how long of it was fun? Before
I would say a good 2-3 weeks before I started to feel really bad.
Gotcha.
Right? I mean, it was like the food was tasting good. I didn't feel too overweight. It didn't feel too unhealthy yet. But then I remember I started snoring about a month in, and that affected my sleep, which affected my mood, which affected my hormones, which affects my personality. And then walking up the stairs became hard. That's the thing. The cardio is the first thing to go. So walking up the stairs became really, really hard. I remember one time I was bending over to clip my toenails, and I literally had to hold my breath as I was trying to clip, and then I knew I had to come up for air because I couldn't finish. So I had to like stop, come up for air, and then go back down and clip, hold my breath. And I've never experienced that before. You know,
especially someone like you who's been a lifelong athlete, right?
Exactly. So it was a little bit of a mind trip, but I knew physically that there were going to be challenges, right? Like I knew the cardio was going to go. I knew I was going to get man boobs and a big gut and a big butt. It wasn't the physical aspect that surprised me. It was the mental and emotional aspect. And that's where the biggest lessons were learned. Because here's the thing. If you grew up your entire life in shape like me, part of your identity is based on what your body looks like, right? Sure. Your identity is this body.
And by the way, can we agree that someone who's been fat and out of shape their whole life, or someone who gets fat and out of shape, that begins to then distort their identity in a negative way as well?
Yeah, I was going to say the opposite of that is true as well. And that's why some people who lose weight tend to go back and gain the weight back, because that's part of their identity. They still identify as that fat person. And so that was me too. And so I freaked out. I wanted to go up to strangers and tell them, hey, I'm not really overweight, you guys. This is just an experiment. Like here's my before picture. This is me. This isn't me right now. So it kind of freaked me out, and I struggled with my confidence and my self-esteem, and it was a rude awakening, and it was really humbling, especially on the mental and emotional side, because I didn't have the therapy. My therapy became Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Mountain Dew on the daily. Oof. But that's kind of like a vicious cycle where it would make me feel good temporarily, but then I would feel awful and shitty later on because of those foods that I was constantly feeding my face, because I didn't have that outlet anymore. So but I see why a lot of people get stuck in that rut, because it is their foe and their friend, at the same time, where like this food makes me feel comfortable. Yeah, I am eating my emotions, but then in the long run, it doesn't make you feel comfortable. It hurts you in the long run. People know that, but it's tough to break that cycle.
The cycle.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, and this might be twisted of me to ask, but what was your favorite cereal? Like the binge cereal? Because I know I've got my own.
100% Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Really?
I would eat a whole box all day long. It's so good.
And I'm curious, was it like, was it 1% milk, 2% whole milk?
Oh, I would do. So here's the thing. I'm lactose intolerant. So I actually did, instead of milk, I did the almond milk with all the sugar in it. So like the tasty almond milk. So that's what I did. So because I already had stomach problems from eating this food. Yeah. I didn't want to add to it with more like lactose intolerance. It would have been messy.
So we know what it did to you emotionally, mindset, snoring. Obviously, if you're snoring, you're not sleeping well. As you said, you're not sleeping well. It begins to mess with your hormones. Your hormones begin to mess with your mood, probably sex life. All those things get impacted, right?
All that.
What about physically? Were you getting any blood tests done? Were you tracking your vitals?
I was. I had a doctor monitor me once a month, and then Dr. Oz, I went on his show, and he monitored me as well. Everything was red really quickly. But here's the surprise. Well, two surprises. One is, for 31 years of my life, I was in shape, right? I was healthy. I was fit. It didn't matter how long I was in shape for. In just 6 months of letting myself go, your body can transform, for the bad that quickly, which is scary, right? Because we think, oh, I'm healthy, I'm fit. Your health can go really quickly, right? If you let yourself go. So that was the one surprise. The blood work that I was doing, I remember some numbers. My blood pressure was 167 over 113.
Holy smokes, that is high, dude.
That is high. I remember I was working in the medical field at this time.
I'm sorry, 167 over 113.
Yeah, instead of 120 over 80.
Yeah, 120 over 80, folks, is average, national average. And actually, I don't know if you know this, 130 over 80 now is the national average.
Really?
And I started yelling at my doctor. This was about a month ago. And I go, why is it 130 over 80? He goes, well, people are just getting fatter, more out of shape, so national average has changed. I'm like, well, my average is 120/80 still. Like, that's what I want to be measured against.
Let's keep it at that. Which is scary. And then my testosterone dropped to the low 200s, which that's the thing. People don't realize when they live this way, they think, oh yeah, I'm out of shape. I have a little bit of fat on me. But you don't realize the food that you're eating affects your hormones as well, right? And if your hormones are out of whack, you're not the same you. You're not the same person. You think you are, but if you're a dude with low testosterone, you're not the same. You don't have the same personality, right? And then that.
Why don't you explain what a healthy testosterone range is? Because you were down to 200.
Yeah, the low 200s, right? For someone that's in their 30s, anywhere from on the low end, I would say 400, 500 to upwards of, some people 1,200,
right?
Depending on the person. But that's like optimal range. But to have my testosterone drop, which I didn't get tested, right before I started. I didn't have access to a doctor back then, but I'm assuming just based off of my own observations, it was probably close to the 600, 700 range. But to have it to the low 200s was scary. Because I noticed my libido was gone, right? My sex drive wasn't there. Feeling exhausted all the time. Those signs of low testosterone were there for sure.
Gotcha.
So
you go 6 months. It was 6 months.
6 months. Yeah.
6 months, 76 pounds. And the day that you decide, this is it. I've documented this whole thing. I've been on Dr. Oz. I've done Jay Leno and all these countless other shows.
Yeah.
And which this ultimately led to a show that you've done 2 seasons now, Fit to Fat to Fit.
Yeah.
Is it on A&E?
Yeah, one was on A&E, the next one was on Lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, which gave you so much stardom and all this. But before we get there, 6 months go by, I'm ready to lose the weight. How does the process begin?
That's a good question. So the way I did it was I had to do cold turkey because I had to lose 75 pounds in 6 months. That's what I told people.
Did you do one last hurrah of?
Yeah, my last meal was a whole box of macaroni and cheese. So what are the calories on that? I actually don't know off the top of my head, but a whole box of macaroni and cheese. I went out with that with a 2-liter bottle of Coca-Cola. Oh, wow. And that was my last meal.
Like, we're not talking Diet Coca-Cola.
No, we're the real stuff with the sugar and everything. And then the next day was, okay, here's your meal plans.
I wonder if you were getting close to like pre-diabetic.
Yeah, I probably, my liver, I developed a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in just 6 months, which is, tends to happen with people that drink a lot of alcohol, but I wasn't drinking alcohol. So it was almost as if I was an alcoholic, yes. But I was just based off of the soda and the types of foods that I was eating, right? Which was scary. In just 6 months, it can just all go like that.
Yeah.
But anyways, I had to do it cold turkey because people were watching. I was on these TV shows, and the way I set it up was like, hey guys, here's what I'm doing. You can watch me. I'm not going to like make this exclusive. I'm not going to do it as some kind of secret. Here's what I'm doing every single day. You could go to my website and watch it for free to show people that it was a lifestyle change. I wasn't working out in the gym 3 times a day. I wasn't starving myself, living off 1,000 calories to lose the weight. I was living a healthy lifestyle. At the time it was like 6 small meals per day, 2,000 calories. Monday through Friday were my workouts. Saturday and Sunday were my recovery days. My workouts were 30 to 40 minutes max, and that's it. And that's what I wanted to show people. And it was hell. I'll be totally honest with you. The first 2 weeks were hell. Letting go of that food was like getting off of drugs. Like, I've never experienced withdrawal pains in my life, but now I can empathize because I understand how powerful the emotional attachment to food really is. Before, I'm like, look, you guys, just willpower your way through it. You just need more willpower. But we know that willpower doesn't work. And for me, my eyes were open to just how powerful food cravings, food addiction can be, even though I only lived it for 6 months. Imagine people living that way for 6 years or 6 decades, and now you're trying to say, hey, no more eating that junk food. Now you got to change this. Everything's going against you. Your body, your mind, your physiology is going against you because your body wants that high. It gives you that high. It does.
So you felt real withdrawals.
Real withdrawals.
And the peak of that was the first 2 weeks.
The first 2 weeks were hell. I've never experienced anything like it. And I could finally understand where my clients were coming from. When I would give them a meal plan, I'm like, just follow the meal plan. They try, but those old habits kick back in, and those emotions with those foods attached are still there lingering, and people think, oh, I just got to willpower my way through it. But we all know it doesn't work.
Now, at this time, I imagine if I were single and doing this, it would have been a lot easier than being married.
Yes, 100%.
If I remember correctly.
Well, to a certain degree, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to pick up ladies as a single guy,
that's true. That's true. That's true. But I mean, at this point, you had a spouse going through this process with you.
We were married, and it was hard on our relationship, even though she knew she was on board with it.
Yeah. I mean, what do you say when your libido's low and you've got a spouse and you voluntarily decided to put on 76 pounds and you're like, no, honey, not interested. How does that night end?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting with her, my ex-wife. We're still good friends, by the way, and we get along. And it's funny because she has her own chapter in the book of what she went through during this process, because people wanted to know, like, how did it affect you?
And your book, by the way, Fit to Fat to Fit, amazing book.
Yeah.
You've got to read this, folks. Yeah.
Thank you. So it was hard for her because she, like I said, she was on board. She knew what I was doing. She was okay with it, and then she got annoyed with it really quickly because I would always be complaining about, like, I don't feel good. Like, do I look fat in this? And she's like, of course you do. You're gaining weight on purpose. Like, yes. But she didn't really care so much about that. She cared so much about my confidence levels. And this is what I tell people. There's nothing sexier than confidence. When you lose your confidence, I don't care what you look like. Like, it's not attractive to be, I'm so out of shape. Like, poor me. That's not attractive. I don't care who you are. So that, on top of being overweight and being, not having the energy and the libido, was like, hey, are you cool if I just go to bed and, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, I'll go to bed. And that's kind of what it was. It was hard. It was really hard on both of us.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, man, because not a lot of people can experience that empathy. And, a lot of fitness trainers, gym owners follow me and need to understand what it's like. Now, I was a fat kid, so I know what it's like. And when you're fat, you automatically, especially in a Western culture like ours, you disappear.
Yeah.
People they don't pay any attention towards you. And all of a sudden, when you do get in better shape and you do have some confidence, you become very visible. So it's great that you shared this with the world and gave people open access to just, look, here's how I'm getting fat, and here's what it's doing to me. Here's what I'm doing to lose that weight.
Yeah.
And you were kind enough to share that at Fitness Business Summit. I think, was it last year or the year before? Last year. And afterwards, you told me, this. So, folks listening to this, there was just over 1,000 people in the audience, gym owners, personal trainers, and Drew is up on stage. I want to paint the picture here, sharing this with coaches, personal trainers, fitness pros, so that they never have to go and put on the weight themselves. They can just, through his experience, go, that's what it feels like. That's what my clients are experiencing. That's what they feel. Aha, the empathy, got it.
Yeah.
But what happened? How many personal trainers came up to you and said, "Can you help me gain fat?"
I had some people both at Fitness Business Summit and over the years kind of like, "Hey, how did you gain fat?" And on my TV show, that's what I had to do, is coach these trainers on how to get fat. Now, I don't recommend it. Like I said, it's not for everybody. For a select few, it works for sure. But it was kind of funny. People were interested in doing that. Like, I want to do it. But I think quickly, just like they do on the TV show, they realize how hard it really is to really do that, because it's not just gaining fat. It's a psychological, trip for a lot of people, and a lot of people aren't ready for that,
You were 31 years old when you did this.
Yeah.
Right? How old are you now?
37, almost 38.
37, almost 38. By the way, I always look at 37 to about 42 is your wisdom years. You're in the sweetest spot ever. I'm 44 now.
Yeah.
And I gained more wisdom between 37 and 42 than in any one chunk of journey of my life.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I know several others. Craig Ballantyne says the same thing. Joel Marion, like anyone I've talked to who's gone onto this side of it.
Yeah,
it's an amazing ride. Enjoy it.
Wow.
That said, at 31 years old, that's a pretty vulnerable thing to do. Like, I'm going to gain weight. You're a lifelong athlete.
Yeah.
Good looking guy. I'm going to gain weight, and then I'm going to take it off. I'm going to let the whole world see me, judge me, right? As it turns out, you've got a tattoo on your arm. Vulnerability is strength.
That's right.
And so you started this vulnerability journey, at least that I know of, at 31, maybe even sooner. What does vulnerability mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, this had a different meaning than Fit to Fat to Fit. When I did Fit to Fat to Fit, I didn't know what vulnerability was, right? I was doing something very vulnerable for sure, but I didn't understand it completely. I wasn't living it by any means. It wasn't until I ran into Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly, that I understood what vulnerability was for me. And to give people a little bit of backstory, the reason I read her book was, I went through a divorce, and it's interesting because Fit to Fat to Fit, there's a parallel between what I went through there and what I've gone through since then. Fit to Fat to Fit was a very empathetic, understanding kind of thing for me to get out of my body and realize that, we have more to offer this world than our bodies. And learning about the empathy carried over into this next phase of my life when I went through a divorce. And the thing people don't know is during Fit to Fat to Fit, when I was on the TV shows with Jay Leno and Dr. Oz, people don't know the pain that we were going through because we had to fake it on the camera. We were struggling in our marriage, and a lot of it has to do with my not embracing vulnerability as a strength, because that's the way I was taught as a kid, was vulnerability is a weakness. You don't show weakness. And that's what you do. You're supposed to just be that person as a man, to not show feelings. And
where were you taught that? Like at home, at church, at school, sports?
It was a combination of all of it, but it was my perception of all those things. It was my perception of sports, right? If I, talked to my coach about feelings, he'd be like, "What are you doing? Shut up. Go run sprints." If I tried to talk to my dad, which I didn't, because from a very young age, I learned you don't talk about those things, because that was the culture I grew up in, religion as well. My perception was it's not a safe space. So keep it in and keep it to yourself. And if you have weaknesses, then you discipline yourself or beat yourself up enough until you overcome them. And that's what I was taught to do. And it was I learned that from a very young age. So I never branched out of that until later on in life, when I was kind of punched in the face, like, "Hey, you're going to learn this lesson, by all means."
Where did the punch come from?
The punch came from, I'm an open book,
yep.
And I do embrace vulnerability as a strength. So for me, to make a long story short, and I did a podcast about this, episode 100, it came from me having an affair, and this happened right before Fit to Fit in my marriage, and I never once in my life ever would have imagined I would be that person that had an affair, because I was taught that's, a bad thing, but it was little things that led up to that. It wasn't like all of a sudden it just happened. It was little things that led up to that, because for me, I grew up in a culture of guilt and shame from the religion I grew up in, the culture of my family and sports. I thought, I was this fuck up since I was a little kid, because I was taught to be perfect. Like, hey, you're supposed to be perfect, but I had weaknesses. I didn't know how to deal with the weaknesses. So I kept it in, thinking that was what you're supposed to do as a man, was keep it in. And it just led to more and more. I did more and more failure-like things, because I saw myself as a failure from a very young age. And I remember you talking about this in your book too, which I recently just read, which is a great book, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you do talk about kind of self-sabotage, and doing things that, you think you're a failure, so you're going to do failure-like things. And that's kind of what I did in this situation, where I was like, you know what, you're already a failure. Why not do this? Because the opportunity was in my face. And it was hard, because I didn't know what to do. So I did what I did before, and that was just keep it in, cover it up until shit hit the fan. I got discovered, and that was the punch in the face. And it's like, okay, what do you do from here?
It's
so sorry to go from that, like other stuff, to this.
that's kind of the direction I wanted to go. And you talked about, I wasn't allowed to be vulnerable. When I talked to Coach about feelings, he'd go, "Just shut the fuck up and go run sprints."
Yeah.
Just through the religion that you were raised in.
Yeah.
Hey, just be perfect. You're supposed to be perfect, because good Mormons are perfect.
Yeah.
And where you're like, well, listen, I think I'm imperfect, therefore there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. And so that begins to go into people's belief system. And where I talked about in my book was that if my belief system was that I'm a foreigner and I'm blue collar and therefore I'm always supposed to be broke, every action that I take will be to reinforce my belief system. So even if I do something that I'm successful in, I will self-sabotage just to reinforce the belief system, to go, see, that's why I failed, because I'm blue collar and foreigner. And I realize that now.
Yeah, 100%.
Instead of dealing with them. Imagine if you did talk about your feelings. Imagine if you did, "Hey, mom, dad, whatever, I don't feel I'm perfect." Oh, it's okay to not be perfect. That's all of life is about figuring out who you are and your path. But in any case, it's hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that someone like you could have this moment of like, damn, I was punched in the face. I didn't know how to handle it. And just when we think that's the lowest part of the life, it kind of gets lower.
Yeah.
And I want to preface this, if you're listening to this as a podcast, like, Drew is a very good looking man. In fact, when I walked into the gym here to BK Strength, I'm like, "Dude, your beard looks amazing. If we were twins, you'd be the better looking version of me." And I said, if this was a movie Twins, you'd be Arnold, I'd be Danny DeVito. And then I went on to say that if in the future they ever make a movie about Osama bin Laden's life, he would be like the young Osama. Like, he's a good, handsome guy.
I like the first compliment, Ben.
I don't want to be compared to Osama bin Laden. But anyway, Drew's a really good looking guy, friends. And I share this because there was Like things got lower for you.
Yeah.
There was an addiction.
100%.
There was an addiction. And I don't know too many people who are vulnerable enough to talk about this, that are open enough to share it so that others who are going through it can heal from it. Would you mind sharing what that next level of depth was?
Yeah, no, not at all. So for me, it started with, like I said, my perception of my religion was one of the commandments or laws we're supposed to live by, is like, being sexually clean, sexually pure. And that included not looking at pornography. Well, I grew up in the 90s, 80s, 90s when that stuff started to come out. And I was a normal teenage kid, but at the time I saw myself as broken because I knew it was bad. I knew it was evil, but yet I was looking at it, and yet all my friends were looking at it, and that's all they talked about, and that's all they like they could, every time we got together, it's like, oh, dude, you see this? And like that was my life, but I tried really, really hard not to look at it, not to partake of it. So I just thought I was broken because I couldn't go talk to my church leader, because the way it's set up in the religion was you're supposed to confess those sins, those sexual sins. And with that confession comes a kind of a quote unquote punishment. At least that's the way I saw it as a kid. They'll say it's not a punishment. It's something to help you be better. So like for like 2 weeks, I couldn't take the sacrament at church, which was the bread and the water that's passed around. Well, I felt so nervous because I felt like people would watch me as they pass it around, because if you don't take it,
That's like the scarlet letter.
Yeah, exactly. So if I didn't take it, I knew my parents might see it, or my bishop, my church leader might see it and say, why isn't Drew taking it? And that was my story that I told myself, and I was so nervous, so I just lied and would just take it. And so I started lying to my bishop, my church leader, and say, no, I don't have that problem. And that was like the worst thing you could do as a kid at a young age. And I developed that from a very young age. And that vicious cycle of pornography consumed me to the point where, I considered myself a failure because of that. And I felt disgusted with myself because, only disgusting people look at pornography. That was the story I told myself. And then that's why the affair happened, was because I was like, you know what? You're already a failure from looking at this stuff. You've already lied to your wife multiple times about that. And this opportunity is in front of you. And that whole thing that you explained of, those beliefs, like, hey, I told you so. You are a failure, and you just failed. And that was my life. And it did get worse, because after that, she found out. And then from there, I was so nervous about what the people thought of me growing up. And I had to change things. So I was willing to do whatever it took to change. And I had to go through addiction recovery, and I had to talk to my family at some point. And it was like some of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Okay. But it's through those moments where you're broken that you become stronger and move forward. And for me, I'm grateful for all of it, because I am who I am today, and if that stuff didn't happen, I wouldn't be who I am today. So in a weird way, I'm grateful that it happened the way it did.
Absolutely. The level of impact you've made on the people that you serve and the community that you serve, I believe it only happens because you've been so vulnerable, because you've gone through hell emotionally that way, healed, and people can connect with you.
Yeah.
Because I read a passage one time. It says, all of life is suffering.
Yeah.
All of life is suffering. And the suffering is good. It's like the best wine is made from grapes that have had that are in high climate, cold weather, poor irrigation, soil that's just difficult to grow in. And if that grape just happens to ripen, that's going to make some amazing wine.
Yeah.
Right? And words have power. What does that mean to you?
Words have power. So one of the things that helped me through this phase was after, the darkness of the divorce and going through the recovery and counseling and life coach and embracing vulnerability as a strength. One of the things I picked up was something called positive affirmations. And every time I say those words, the thought of Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me, something like that, right? Like super cheesy. And I was like, this is weird. I don't know if I can do this. But I heard on some podcast that I was listening to how words can affect you at the cellular level, right? They talk about some scientific studies of doctors or people saying positive, kind words to certain living things like plants, right? And then another plant, they'll say negative things too, and you'll see a difference in those two living things and how words affect them. Well, if that can happen to another living thing, imagine what it does to us. And so if we have the negative self-talk our whole life, and then all of a sudden you say something positive to yourself. I remember the first time I looked in the mirror and did this, I was crying. I was crying. And when I looked in the mirror and I looked at myself and I said, I love you, even though all the stuff that I've been through, it was really powerful for me. It really was. And so I started doing it on a regular basis, consistently, and I started to believe it. You know, and I remember you talking about this in your book where, you were jumping in the corner saying, I like myself. You know, because you have to balance out all that negative self-talk that you've had your entire life. And now saying it's weird, but so much negative self-talk, balance it out a little bit just by doing something small and simple like positive affirmations. So words do have meaning and they do make a difference. Even if you don't believe it at first, just do it and stick with it and stay consistent with it. And eventually you'll start to believe those words that you're saying. You know?
That's absolutely true, man. You say something or do something enough, your subconscious starts to pick it up, and it becomes a new positive loop that plays in your head.
Yeah.
Like I grew up, I think this is why you and I have connected so well as well. We both grew up with having some negative self-talk playing as a loop in the back of our head. Even though we were good at certain things, whether you were in sports, me being able to sell and make money, I always had this like, but you're a foreigner. And you don't belong here, and you're blue collar, and you always run out of money before you run out of month, right? Therefore, go out and sell. Good luck. Like you can't have that negative self-talk and then go get him, Tiger, right? So when I heard from Brian Tracy in one of his audio programs, like, listen, the best thing you can do is positive affirmations before going and talking to someone about selling them anything. And he talked about how he stood in the corner of his office and just stood there. I was like, well, you know what? If he stood there and said, I like myself, and it worked, I'm going to jump. And I just started jumping in the corner, like, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. And the first dozen times, I don't even think those words settled in. I think what changed my state was how stupid it was that I'm standing in the corner, jumping up and down right before I go talk to a prospect about selling them a $10,000 personal training package. And so, I'm jumping up and down, and I stop and I turn around to walk towards the door, and I'm like laughing to myself. And I'd walk out of my office door with a smile just fading off my face. And immediately I see that prospect smiling because they see a smile, they smile. And I realized, holy shit, this is working. After a dozen or so times, it actually started to sink in, and the negative self-talk started to be like, I'm a badass. I really like myself, the loop changed. So, Drew, today you're making such an impact, man. It's not only the show, not only the book. You're working on a new book. Tell me what your business looks like today and the impact that you're making.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting because I started Fit to Fat to Fit back in 2011, right? And I tried to monetize it. I wasn't very good at it for the first 5 years. And I struggled, right? I was struggling to barely make six figures, right? It was like high five some years, sometimes mid five, or even like I had 1 year, 2016, that was probably my worst year, and it really humbled me financially. But then once I put my life in line, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, the financial part, like it was so interesting how all those things came together. And finally, I knew who I was, and I knew what my business was about, and I knew what I could bring to the table. That's where everything aligned, and my business took off. It was the past 2 years that that's happened. But it took me to bring in the mental, emotional, and spiritual side of it, which most people don't think they need. And some people, maybe they don't. But for me, and I think most people, it's getting all those things in line and balance. Because we see this a lot of time in business. People sacrifice their health for wealth, right? Right. I think you've done that before.
Absolutely, I've done that.
And we think, if I just focus and grind really hard on this, then I'll be happy. But you don't realize you need all of those things: the physical health, the mental health, emotional and spiritual health, as well as the financial health. And for me, it was getting those things in line, and then that's when my business started taking off. So what I'm trying to do with Fit to Fat to Fit and this whole movement is help people realize that, right? I could sell people meal plans and workouts. That's cool, but people are starting to realize, I think, that there's more to physical health than just that, right? And so if I can bring in the mental, emotional, spiritual component, that's what I'm trying to do with Fit to Fat to Fit through an empathetic approach, right? And right now I'm big in the keto world, so I'm trying to do that with keto as the hook, right? This is a tool that you can use to help with your physical health, but let's also work on your mental and emotional, spiritual health as well through empathy as that catalyst to making some real change. Because in my opinion, this world needs more empathy, but especially in the fitness industry, it needs more empathy. So, because I see this division between skinny fit people over here, the models that look great, they work hard, but then there's a lot of judgment, misunderstanding about people who are the majority of people on this planet right now are probably, most of us overweight, diabetes, obese, and so now we're trying to, help them, but it's a lot of judgment, misunderstanding, like eat less and work out. What's wrong with you? So, from my experience, I'm trying to bring what I've learned over the years, and that's what my new book, Complete Keto, which comes out in February, goes into, is is helping people not just on the physical, but it's helping them on the mental, emotional, spiritual, so that it's a complete transformation instead of just a physical transformation, which we all know might not last forever for some people. Some people will go back because their identity and their emotional issues with food. So I'm trying to help people with complete transformation with my brand, Fit to Fat to Fit. So I have a lot of stuff going on, like you said, the new book. I have my supplement line, keto supplements, and then I have another business coming out next year that I'm really excited about as well to help with that.
How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a personal trainer? Do you see yourself as an entrepreneur, coach, like influencer? How do you define yourself?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the day. I have
too,
many
huh?
hats.
Yeah, me too.
I wear many hats. I guess it would just be a coach, a health coach, but to the masses, right? I don't do one-on-one training. That's why I don't consider myself a personal trainer. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would say. Coach.
Good for you. Good for you. You built quite the empire. Complete Keto, your book. Yeah. Let's talk about that. What's it like having to write a second book? Do you feel the pressure coming off a New York Times best-selling book?
That's a good question. I do. Fit to Fat to Fit was a New York Times bestseller. I feel very fortunate about that. But let's be honest, 2012 to now, the game has changed. Yeah. It's a lot harder.
I know that.
Know this. Yeah, you know this.
I sold a shit ton of books. I'm not a New York Times bestseller.
I know, it's crazy.
We are hitting the Wall Street Journal list, though.
Okay, there you go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's not easy, not at all. And it's kind of like a game. But here's the thing. I'm just trying to put the best information out there. With Complete Keto, I poured my heart and soul into it. So whether it's a New York Times bestseller or not, I really don't care. I want it to impact as many people as possible because my mission, like I said, is not helping people with a physical transformation. Yes, keto is the hook. It has a 30-day keto program in it, but it's also the mindset training that we've talked about. All the things that I've learned over the years from personal development and through Fit to Fat to Fit on the mental and emotional side, I'm trying to bring that to the table as well as the physical transformation, which people are obsessed with, right? Let's be honest. People here in America want the quickest way to lose the most amount of weight in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of effort, right? People want that. We know it doesn't exist, but we will give them a plan that will help give them those results. But if I could help them on the mental, emotional, spiritual side, they'll come for the physical, the weight loss, right? But hopefully they'll stay for the complete transformation. And that's what I'm trying to do with Complete Keto.
And I think that was the hook that you said. You said Complete Keto is really a total package.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much of the book is about a ketogenic diet versus the mental, the spiritual, the emotional piece?
Yeah, I would say it's about 60% keto, right? Because people need to understand what it is, how it works. It's not just butter, bacon, and cheese all day long. So there's, I know, I wish it were that easy. But there's the scientific part of it, which I keep very basic for people to understand. So it's kind of like a beginner's guide for keto. But then the 40% is the mindset, right? So in your meal plans, for example, on your daily planner, you'll also have room for things like meditation, positive affirmations, getting your mind right. Because as my buddy Sean Stevenson, you know him, he talks a lot about not just working out, but working in. Like working in is just as important as working out, So getting in that work in on the mental, emotional side and spiritual side is just as important. So don't forget about that part. And we have all of that laid out in the book along with the physical keto program.
Is the book available on Amazon for pre-order?
It is. It is.
Well, by God, I don't know why you're sitting around listening to this show. You should be on Amazon right now, folks, buying a copy, pre-ordering a copy of Complete Keto by Drew Manning. Am I right?
Thank you. Yes, I would appreciate that.
What are they doing? Listen to the show right now. Yeah, listen, guys. One, I could vouch for Drew, and I can say that everything he puts out is quality. Number two, you're going to want to pre-order this book and be someone who's going to get behind Drew, who's on an amazing mission and has a wonderful purpose behind it. And so to support a friend like that is always something that we love doing. So, Drew, you've given us a lot of information here. You've shared a lot about your journey and your mission and your purpose. I'm curious if someone wants to get behind this mission or wants to even maybe become the next Drew Manning in their space.
Yeah.
Where's the first place to start?
That's a great question. I actually just did a post about this today, a little bit about like some people want, they want something in life, and it's cool to have a big goal, right? Set a big goal. But a lot of times even with physical transformation, we focus so much on the results that we forget about the process, and people will want that result, but they're not willing to put in that effort, that hard work to get to that result. And I think the piece that people are missing is the fact that if you focus on the process, in my opinion, the results will take care of themselves over time. If you stay consistent, you know your why, you have your vision, and you don't give up, you will figure out how to get to that result, right? But the problem that people have is they focus so much on just the result and they obsess about that they don't put in the hard work to find out the how. And so for me, it took me, like you said in the beginning, and this is a good way to wrap it up, I didn't do Fit to Fit Fit. I didn't have media connections. I didn't have money, right, to back it up. I didn't have some marketing strategy to get on all these TV shows. I had a vision. I had a why. I knew I would never give up on it. And I focused on the process. And the results took care of themselves over time. And I think that's really important for anybody out there as an entrepreneur, a business owner, or just in life, even with physical transformation, is, the results, yes, they will come if you focus on the process and stay consistent on the process.
I think that's a great note to finish on. And one of my favorite comedians of all time, Jerry Seinfeld, said when he was interviewed, like, how is it that every Christmas, my wife and I and our kids will go to Las Vegas the day after Christmas, and we'll watch Jerry Seinfeld at Caesar's Palace do a stand-up. And someone was interviewing him afterwards, and we were there, and they said, Jerry, you don't need, you've made billions of dollars. You don't need to be doing this. Why are you doing this? Why are you still writing comedy bits? He goes, it's not comedy that I love so much. It's the process of making people laugh. He goes, I've fallen in love with the process. And I think that's such a poignant message you're sending as well. Dude, someone wants to connect with you on social media or website. Where do they go?
Super simple. Just fit number 2, fat number 2, fit. That's my website, my podcast, my first book, all my social media handles, fit to fat to fit.
Easy enough. You ready to crush the weights?
Let's do it, man.
Let's roll.